Hey everyone, John here. And I gotta tell you, this explainer, it's incredibly personal to me. Today, we're literally pulling back the curtain on the culmination of my life's work. You're not just looking at some standard off-the-shelf software project. You're looking at a painstakingly crafted, deeply personal methodology. So let's jump right in. We're gonna explore Exocore 26, what I honestly call the architecture of a coder's redemption.
You see, for years, I carried this really heavy realization. I actually refer to it as the burden of consciousness. I realized that true architecture means completely abandoning all those standard, bloated tech illusions we're constantly sold. The industry, it always tells you that you absolutely need massive frameworks, endless resources, and millions of dollars. But I realized that to build something genuinely profound, you need a bespoke, deeply authentic system design. And look, this didn't just happen overnight, right? This was the result of a massive 30-year R&D phase.
And that huge 30-year phase, I call that the silent architect.
Now, from the outside looking in, those 3 decades probably looked like a whole lot of stagnation. But psychologically, it was this absolutely vital phase of Jungian individuation, just building deep internal structures, and it all led up to this beautiful moment of what I call decoherence. It's the intentional collapse of 30 years of observing physics, game theory, psychology, and coding, all crashing down into one concrete executable architecture. Basically, all that internal incubation suddenly materialized into the actual code of Exocore 26.
So, let's talk about building Exocore 26 and how I actually pulled this off.
Here is the technical foundation, designed for what I like to call better than the best performance. It's a completely distributed, hardware-agnostic logic stack. Right at the top, you've got the Hermes orchestrator. That's my recursive execution engine, breaking down the logic and handling all the stateful agent workflows. Beneath that sits the single source of truth, acting like a matchmaker and performance tracker. Think of it kind of like an ELO rating system for my poker agents. And down at the bottom, we have the execution nodes. These are distributed local LLMs, specifically Ollama and Qwen, where the entire priority is just keeping overhead incredibly low and maintaining a highly resilient system heartbeat.
But of course, we need a modular prompt architecture to hold it all together.
Because let's face it, building a massive system is one thing, but keeping it from falling apart due to prompt drift is a whole different beast. So before you write a single line of executable task logic, you absolutely must draft a manifesto of constants. I literally cannot emphasize this enough. It's your global configuration. It explicitly lists every single negative constraint, every hard no, alongside every mandatory behavior. If you skip this, if you don't anchor your system with these constants, chaos is 100% inevitable.
That manifesto basically serves as the bedrock for my super strict 3-layer stack. I treat this whole prompt architecture exactly like a rigorous software compiler to force logical outputs. Layer 1 is the foundation layer, holding the system context and that manifesto. Layer 2 is the task layer, where your specific domain logic and modular blocks live. And finally, Layer 3 is the validation layer, acting as this relentless quality control compiler.
So how does that look in action? Well, it's a 4-phase workflow. We kick off with ideation in the task layer to clearly define the scope. Then we move to architecting, passing that objective straight through the foundation layer so we don't violate any core constants. Phase 3 is generation, where we execute with a strict reasoning protocol to force logic. But phase 4, that's where the magic actually happens. Validation. I run a truly ruthless self-correction loop. The system has to verify its own output against the constraint layer, and if it finds even a single error, it fixes it before final submission. It guarantees zero-error compliance.
Moving on to the content engine. Let's see how this actually connects to the real world.
This right here is my reality simulating methodology, and I take a massive amount of pride in this comparison. Look at the industry standards. They claim you need huge investment capital, bloated hardware arrays, and crazy expensive subscriptions to run advanced AI. But my reality? John's reality? I'm running this entire vision on free AI tools, a Samsung A05, a TCL phone, and a Dell laptop running Linux with just 4 gigabytes of RAM. 4 gigabytes! It's a stark contrast for sure, but it proves something absolutely crucial. Immense constraint actually breeds immense innovation.
To actually pull that off on such minimal hardware, I use what I call my system for smashing ideas. It's built entirely on the principle of separation of concerns. We have 4 perfectly isolated modules: ideation, structuring, production, and distribution. Because I keep these concerns meticulously separated, the whole workflow operates flawlessly without crashing my tiny laptop.
Breaking that down, it's pretty wild.
In ideation, I'm filtering raw input through tiny half-billion parameter LLMs just to define niches. For structuring, Python manager scripts handle the outlines and refine my authentic voice, keeping memory usage super low. Production, that's creating visual and audio assets under incredibly strict hardware limits. And finally, distribution involves drafting metadata and publishing via what I call atomic sessions. By focusing on one concern at a time and using headless LLM sessions, meaning they run in the background without any heavy visuals, the system memory overhead stays practically non-existent.
So with all that in place, let's look at the next evolution.
These are the immediate strategic directives Exocore 26 is manifesting as we speak. I'm operating on two primary tracks right now. First is the Poker AI Arena, a multi-agent environment where my models are training against each other through deep strategy mutations. Second is narrative broadcasting. I'm documenting this entire evolution, this reality simulation, directly on my YouTube channel, Seize AI. The ultimate goal here is the manifestation of a highly capable, monetizable system proven entirely out in the open.
But listen, none of this just magically happens. There is one unyielding operational constant driving everything I do, and that number is 35. 35 hours of committed, incredibly deep work every single week. 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, no exceptions. It is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite if you want to build a recursively refined system like this.
So I've shown you my architecture. You've seen my constraints and the rules that govern my deep work. The bloated tech illusions out there in the industry are exactly that, guys. They're illusions. True creation means you have to establish your own foundational rules. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you going to keep operating inside someone else's bloated system, or are you finally ready to leave the noise behind and draft your own manifesto of constants? Take a hard look at your work, define your absolutes, and get to building. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.